all see my screen? Because I can no longer see you guys again. It's a bit like last week.
Yes, we can see it, Caroline.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. All right, so introduction is just to me, again, in case you missed it from last week. So I'm now a Python and Rust developer. I've had a sort of a slightly strange career involving being an epidemiologist and also a GP and having a startup. And this is our product, which is a simulation software. And it is completely built in Rust at the back end and the front end in TypeScript. Very happy to talk about that at length. And then author of the Async Rust book, which is coming out in literally like 25 days. So you can pre-order it on Amazon, which is very exciting. And then I'm doing this PhD looking into synthetic data, for which I'm using the backend in Surreal. And Surreal are sponsoring my PhD, so I'm not employed by Surreal, but I've used them a lot, and they're fantastic supporters of my PhD and many other things. Okay, so what I thought I would do is just a quick recap of what we did last week before we go onwards, just in case anyone had missed it from last week or has forgotten. So last week we worked around this like problem set of celebrities, and we had 50 celebrities, and I'd given you some code which is available. I'll send that again. And what we did is we created a table with name, country of origin, age, gender, and then an array of their professions. So, you know, in this day and age, everybody can have more than one profession. So you might be an actor and also a singer and have a business, for example. And so we created this table through this code. So this is really what we're going to be working with again, but I just wanted to reiterate it. So we defined our table using a schema full keyword. We created our fields with types, and then, sorry, just to go back to that. So we've got, name, country of origin, age, and gender, and then a profession. And then this is a cool thing where you've got this array and it's a string, an array of strings. And then we created our celebrity data. So what I'll do is I'll put in the chat the link to this. But essentially what you'll see is you've got the create celebrity, that's on the celebrity table. We're setting all of the parameters that we would expect. And then when we execute that, we get some input into our table. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I will share that. 2 links. Oh, someone's already done the Surrealist one, even better. So what I'll do is I'll just get the other one up because I've got it here. Right. So we've got this one. So that should be open. Is it public gist? So you should be able to just use that, copy and paste it into your Surrealist app. What I'm going to do now is just go back to this, and then let's go back to this. So we'll come and we just remember what this looks like. So we did this and we ended up with a table here with 50 celebrities in it, which has got a lot of information. One thing that we didn't really talk about last time was this ID that gets created, and we're going to end up using that a lot more in this session, and hopefully you can see some uses of it. We've got our celebrity table now, and then we can do some SQL-like queries. So, for example, we can do, select name, age, country, and profession, and we can add some filters. So, female celebrities over 50, and we get some output. And we can also add some queries around that profession, which is an array. Just wanted to demonstrate that. Cool. So this was another SQL-like query that we covered last time. So we did select name and profession. where from celebrity, where array is over array of profession, which, as you remember, was an array of strings, was over 3. That was just the point, that you can use these special functions to be able to interact with Surreal. So Surreal's got a whole bunch of special functions that you can just use out of the box. I would say that they're much more extensive than you would find in other databases, and they're really nice. And they always have this format where you have a keyword, then you have 2 semicolons, and then semicolons, 2 colons, and then another word. And yeah, you get used to seeing them in your code quite a lot. So let's just run that, and then we'll go from that. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second, present something else. Great. So this is the, here we go. Okay. So I'm going to use this Surrealist environment. I'm going to reset mine because I've just been playing around with it. I'm going to create my data. And if you come to the left-hand side and you go down to Explorer, you'll see that a table has now been created. And that's what I was showing you in the PowerPoint. And if I click on one of them, we're going to have a very Beyonce heavy session. So I make no apologies for that. So if we click on Beyonce, we can open up and we'll see we've got everything here. So she's multi-talented, so she's got many a profession, and we can see that. And so we've got the ID that I pointed out before. And then we've got these answers, which you may remember from last time. I'll quickly cover again. Cool. So in addition to what we talked, this sort of SQL query, I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to go back. What we also can have here is schemaless. So we talked briefly about this last week. So if we wanted to add in social media information, the important thing here, and the reason I'm iterating this again, is we are essentially adding more information without having to create a new table. So it's really useful. It's great for kind of prototypes. It's great for adding stuff that you're like, I don't know where this is going to end up going. And so it can be something which you can then use for querying as well. So it's extremely useful. And yeah, we saw this before last week. We're going to be doing some more queries today. And then finally, our last exercise of last week was that we went through a vector search. So we all answered a quiz, a personality quiz, and we had some answers for those various celebrities. And they were in the answers field of the celebrity table. And we could then search for them, put in our own answers, and then use one of these inbuilt functions. So the vector similarity cosine, to then find the closest celebrity in a 5-item array, or a 5-item vector, to who you're most similar to. I'm very consistently always the same as Harrison Ford, which I'm pretty pleased about, actually. And we all had a go at that. So that was just like a whistle-stop tour of what we did last week. I just wanted to do that so you have the opportunity to ask any questions before we go on. So if there's any questions, please let me know. Okay. Unless there's some furious typing going on, I think we're all good. All right. So this week, we're going to be going through a couple of things, which, and that's that apps. Yeah. So, we're going to be going through some basic CRUD operations. We've covered some of this before, particularly the create, but I think it's useful to just demonstrate how we can see that. Then we'll be looking a little bit at some of the graph connections, all based around the celebrity table. And then at the end, I really just wanted to point out a couple of resources that you could use with regards to these special functions, which I think are hugely powerful. and also just to highlight some amazing work that Alex has done on an education course that you can use for free, which we'll demonstrate at the end. Cool. So create. So we've already seen create, and in that example, we were creating a new table and filling it with some information, kind of all in one. It actually isn't one query, but it looks like one query because we were just using one file. So in this example, what we're just adding some more information to the celebrity table for Ryan Gosling. We're putting in all of the information that we need to have. We could, at this point, also add in the information for the schemaless part of it. So if we had, for example, his information about social media, that could go into this create content. So we've seen this before, but just to demonstrate, this is how you could add additional information to, or it's a way you could add additional information into the celebrity table. Cool. So read, or select, we might say. This is how we're going to grab information out from our database. Those of you who are using Postgres or SQL of any sort, you'll be very familiar with this. So it basically is exactly the same. We select the things that we want, the columns that we want from any table. So in this case, select name and age, and then we're using the from, and we're saying the celebrity, and that's the celebrity table, and then we're applying this condition. So where origin, country of origin equals United States. And just to demonstrate again, it's super easy to do like filtering by an array, which I know there's various different flavors of SQL. Sometimes it can be kind of annoying when you have stuff nested in, for example, like JSON. And so it can be quite challenging to do that in other databases, whereas this, it seems super easy to me. I speak from experience because I've had the medical education app that we have created. It essentially uses a lot of nested JSON data, and querying it can be really problematic. So this is a better solution. Okay, we have to update. So I had to check that this was actually correct. I either thought Taylor Swift was in her 20s or older than me because she's accomplished so much. But she's basically, she's 34 turning 35. So when it comes to her birthday, we can update her age. And so we're going to use this keyword update. We're updating something in celebrity. We're setting the age. So we're setting what that field is and giving it a new value. And then we're adding some conditions. So we're saying, where name equals Taylor Swift. If we had the ID, we could also do it by ID, or we could add some additional filters if we wanted to change sort of multiple rows. So very kind of standard, what you'd expect to be able to do, super easy. And yeah, once that executes, that will be updated. Cool. And you can also delete. So again, very easy, what you would expect. So you delete from celebrity where, whatever the condition is. So if we wanted to delete Taylor Swift, this is how you would do it. So those are your basic kind of operations. Now I thought it would be kind of your turn. So if we use the information, the gist that we had last week, and you can run that through Surrealist or put it on Surrealist, you can then add a new celebrity, update a profession, delete a celebrity, and then just get really familiar with all of finding, doing some queries. So, you can make up your own, but find all celebrities from the United States, find all female singers from the United States. And I give you sort of 5 minutes to try that. And if there's any problems, just put it in the chat. I will share my screen again, but I'm just going to make it not full screen so I can actually see the chat. So let me just do that. Thank you, Ned. Oh, it isn't Ned, actually. Sorry. Cool. How is everyone getting on? Have you been able to add anybody and get it all running? Yes?
I'll double check, but I didn't check. I just added Tom Hanks again.
Oh, popular choice.
But then it added twice. So
Yeah, so unlike kind of some of the SQL options, you can add things twice. That's one of the flexibilities of Surreal.
okay.
I guess in the SQL world, you would have name as a unique
Integrity. Yeah.
You'd have it as unique, and so it wouldn't happen. But you can, essentially, it's because it is a bit different in Surreal, you can add things more than once, and the ID is the unique part.
Okay, so there is no concept of unique constraint more than just the primary key would be the actual identifier for that set of data, I guess.
Alex, I'm going to let Alex answer this since he's put his hand up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There is a full suite of assertion and constraints, but only when you define it in a schemaful way. So in schemaful, anything goes, but then as you define your schema, you can define any type of constraints you want.
Okay, so it will be just similar to a normal MySQL database where you can have your constraints as well, but in schemaful, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Cool. Will you give me a thumbs up if you want me to continue, or maybe a thumbs down, or maybe that's a bit aggressive. Maybe we'll just do some sort of celebration if you would like to have a few more minutes. Okay, so we've got 2 for moving on. Okay, sweet. I'm just going to take it. So I'm going to share in the chat for later the next bit of code. Please don't run this until we got to that stage. Well, I mean, you can, but just because once I share my screen, I can't see. Okay, cool. All right. So what we're going to talk about next is graphs. So this is really a lot about what I'm starting to use SurrealDB for. So I can talk about what I'm doing in my PhD at the end, if that's of interest to anyone. But essentially, I have this problem where I have to have connections between different types of objects. And like it actually ends up being both a tree and a graph, two different things. But essentially, we have nodes of information, and they're connected by edges to other nodes of information. And so in other databases, like a graph database, you can also do this, but perhaps what you give up in having that is some of the flexibility around doing sort of SQL-like queries. And so Surreal has found this nice place where you can do both. And so I just wanted to remind everybody of what a tree and a graph looks like. We're not really so bothered about this right now, but just keep that in mind, that we're going to try and connect two things together. And in our example, the nodes, so these blobs, these circles, they are the celebrities. So they contain the information about our celebrities. And then the lines or the edges between the nodes are our relationships. And I hope you'll see that there's some really cool, I really like the syntax when we come to describing graph relationships. I think it's super easy to understand and kind of much more human and intuitive than some other query languages that I've seen, but I'll leave that up to you to make a decision. So first of all, what we're going to do is, actually, we don't even need to do this. Let's skip this bit. We're going to create a connection between Beyonce and Lady Gaga. And if I go back to my data, here we go. Switching again. Okay, can you see my Surrealist? Cool. Okay, so we've got all of our create and we've got our database here and we're happy about that. Now we're going to make a table. So we will make a table because we want to have this this type. And so type in this example, it's probably a bad name actually because type means so many things in coding. What I mean by this is type of relationship. So in this case, we're defining a connections table, schema-full connections table, and we're having a relationship from celebrity to a celebrity, and we have this field type on connection, which is essentially a string. Okay, and that would be things for, like, for example, a family member, or maybe they were collaborators on a project, or their friends, something like that. So let's run that. And once we've run that, we'll see that there is a, actually, let me run it again. Okay. So we've got a connections table now, which is empty, kind of what we would expect. But you'll see here that it looks, it's probably quite hard to tell, but it's a different type of table. So here it's got the square icon. Basically, it's like rows and columns. And then here we've got a connections table. So that should kind of tell you that there is something different about this just in Surrealist, and hopefully we can use that. Cool. So if you go to the gist, you'll see that I've just run this first query here, the first 2 lines. And then what I'm going to do is then fill the relationship table. With me so far? Okay, cool. So then if we go to adding our connections, oh yes, there's a question.
When you said that the type of table is slightly different, like in the definition of creating that connection table, how have you made sure that it's typed like a graph or a link?
So I've got this bit. Can you see that?
Yeah.
When I'm defining the table connection and saying schema-full, so that's kind of the same as what we had before. I'm saying the type is a relation table. And it is a relation between celebrity and celebrity, which is the table.
Okay, and it can be one to many as well. Like
Exactly.
It can, yeah. Okay.
Just for simplicity, I'm making it
Mhm.
one, so we don't have to
Yeah.
worry about adding something else. I thought about adding country of origin again, but I thought, okay, we'll just keep it.
So
as-
celebrity. So for as per my understanding, it's like just a relationship between a table with the data between the table, celebrity and celebrity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks. Great question. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some data, some information about the connections between our celebrities. Now we've got 50 celebrities. I didn't want to abuse ChatGPT to such an extent that it came up with every possible way that they're connected. So we've just got a few. And it's going to be mostly focused around Beyonce because she knows everyone apparently. And so in this first example, we're going to be grabbing Beyonce. So here we're using this let. So we have this special character and we're creating this variable essentially by running this select icon, select statement. And that will assign the result of that, which is the ID, to this variable. So what we're doing in here is we're going to essentially grab this ID, which is the unique ID which identifies Beyonce, and save it as the person1 variable. Okay, then we're going to do the same for Lady Gaga. So we have our two variables, person1 and person2, and then we're using this this special word relate, and we're saying person1 has a connection to person2, and it's via the connections table, and we're going to set the type as a collaboration. So if I just do this, I'm just going to delete the rest of this just for now, just so we can just run one query. Okay, so I've run one query. If I go to the connections table now, there is a there's some data in it. Now it's not particularly human readable because it is using these unique IDs, but essentially we have an ID of our connection tables, so that's got its own ID, and in the in we've got this a celebrity with their ID, and then an out we've got a celebrity with their ID. So that's basically saying the first thing is like in, and then it goes to another, it is connected in an outwards direction to another celebrity, and then that's where we've got our type, which is this collaboration. So that would essentially allow us to create those edges in the graph that we saw before. Now it seems slightly challenging to to look at this and then think, oh yeah, I know that this person is definitely a Beyonce, especially because we all have different IDs. So you all have a different ID on your computer compared to my computer. And so that can seem really confusing. But essentially, because we're not going to be looking at this in this way. I'm using this for a teaching example. We're not going to be clicking around on here trying to get back to a person. We're going to be using the query language. So if you just sort of take that as a given, it's a bit less confusing, I think. But I just wanted to demonstrate that the data is being created. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And what we'll do is we'll just run our other one. So I've got a few here. And what I really like about the syntax here, because I think it is so intuitive, is the arrows. That you can just put the arrows between the things. So like person1's variable, we're just sending it as it's a connection via an arrow. So you know exactly what table it's hitting to another or whatever node it would be. In our case, it's still celebrity. And then we're setting a type of friendship. That, to me, is super intuitive. And I think, you're not having to do these complex nested SQL queries or graph, other sort of graphing queries. So we'll run that and we'll look. And maybe I did not actually run that. Hold on. Oh, it's having a moment, or maybe I'm having a moment. There you go. Cool. So let me just reset that because I think I ran it twice before I didn't actually refresh it. So that's really helpful. And then make the table, add the connections. Okay. And we've got a few connections. Okay. So once we get to that stage, we can now query it. And so, for example, something that you might want to do is you might want to find all of the connections from or to Beyonce. So I could do this like this. Okay, so in this case, I am doing a select. Okay, so exactly what we saw before, same syntax. We're doing name because we want Beyonce, the name. And then we're in our query, we're doing it arrow, and then the connection. So that's the table. And we're doing it on celebrity name. And we're giving a connected, we're putting it as basically as an alias, like, so make a new output as a connected celebrities and from celebrity table. And we're saying where the name is Beyonce. That makes sense. So when we run that, we get instantly all of our connected celebrities. So what it's doing is it's taking that node of Beyonce and then it's seeing what is connected to it via the connections table. And then this little bit of syntax here is allowing me to return not the ID, which is, as we've just discussed, not very human readable, but it allows us to return the celebrity's name. And that it's getting that from the celebrities table. But because it's got the unique ID, it can instantly return the name. Does that make sense? Cool. So I think that's a good example. There's obviously lots more complicated queries you can do with graphing and doing combinations of different, filters, or adding multi-chained connections, but this is kind of the basic principle. So I don't know if you want to have a play around with that. Add your own connections. I suggested, and I'll just put this up here. I'm just going to put this query in the chat. Don't know if it, so that you don't have to copy. You don't have to look at my screen. So that's how you can run that connection. And then if I suggest that you do this. So yeah, add a new celebrity connection from the 50 in the list, unless you want to add your own connection, your own new celebrity, and then add it to an existing celebrity and then query it in the search. So if I give you 5 minutes for that, yeah, any questions, just put them in the chat or stick your hand up. Is it Alex? Is there anything you want to add at this point?
No, I think unless there's any questions, I think that's fine.
Great. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Yes.
Just thinking about the actual use case, from your experience, how easy it is to add a few questions, basically add this as part of the code, like when you can create these connections via code. Is it it's like similar to the way we would create new database records? And second question is, if I need to, because in my mind there is a scenario where I would be doing some sort of matching,
Mm-hmm.
and if I need to update that matching, is it possible?
Yeah, so Alex might be the best person to ask about this, but I'll tell you my experience. You can remove relationships between two things, so you can break that the edge or remove the edge between two nodes, because it is just being recorded in the database, so that can be severed. So I think that's your second question, which is an update. And then the first question you had, which was around like, how easy is this to use it? I guess your question is, if it's not if we're not just putting the query language directly into, say, Surrealist, if I wanted to do it via, say, Python or something, is that, yeah. So it's really easy to do that. So you would just update it in the same way that you, or you would just add the data in exactly the same way, except you would essentially be writing it in whatever language you want to use that also has an SDK, and then you can send it essentially to the
connection.
database. Yeah, so if you wanted to, for example, have a function which then took in, you know, a list of names or something and then executed it sequentially, that's something that you could do. I'm making it super simple just for a teaching scenario.
Yeah.
Alex, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, just also pointing out as well that you don't have to execute the late statements like one after another. Say you wanted to add in like 100,000 relationships, you can actually use the kind of like insert statement to kind of like insert those 100,000 relationships like all in one go.
Well, okay, and like in the normal SQL database, we try to do it in batches, like general practices, you do it in batches for the transaction commits, so that if it has to roll back, then something like that. So do we support that as well in SurrealDB?
Yeah, the one thing SurrealDB doesn't support yet is kind of like cursors. So you wouldn't really necessarily do that, but like you can like do your own batches. We typically like are working with approximately 1,000 records at a time, but you can insert anywhere from like 100,000 to 1,000,000 records at a time, like depending on how powerful your machine is. Yeah, so it's kind of like depends on the shape and the size, but we generally say around like 1,000 records at a time.
Yeah, similar like a normal SQL database where it will allow only 1,000 arguments, like a query parameter size. Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. Yeah.
Hi. I have two questions here. So does it support directed graph or no? There is no direction here.
Yes, it is both. It's both. It is directed, but you can also do undirected. So by default, you set the direction from the in and out. So the in would be the incoming direction, out would be the outgoing direction. But by default, you can also go from out to in.
Okay, so in this select statement, we can also change the direction. So,
yeah.
And the other question is that can we assign also how we can assign a weight to these connections? Is it possible?
Sorry, I missed.
Is it possible to assign a weight, for example, to the connections between two nodes?
Oh, wait.
Yeah, weight.
Yeah. So you can actually, because the connections themselves are full tables, you can add any type of connection to it. So you could have a field called a weight, or you could have any number of fields on that connection, and then you can use the var clause to kind of like filter on that, or use some logic to actually take that into account.
And the last question, I know that it's not a visualization tool, but is there any extension that can visualize the graph for some cases that it makes sense to see the graph?
In the Surrealist Designer, we have kind of a mix of an entity relation diagram with the kind of like graph connections. But we don't have the typical kind of like network X or like other type of graph visualization yet. That is something that we're working on.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay. Are we pretty much done? Cool. All right, so let me go back to here. Okay, so I think really at this point, we're just going to be talking, this is kind of the end of the coding examples, but I just wanted to cover two more things at the end. I think we've kind of had questions. There'll be an opportunity to speak at the end and add any additional questions. So let's just move on. Okay, so this is going to be relatively, let me just get rid of this, present, switch it back and forth. You know what they really need to invent is like a way that you can also have like chat, like your Chrome and also PowerPoint at the same time, and you just flick back and forth with one click rather than sharing the whole window. Anyway, they should invent it. Okay, so if we go to Surrealist, Surreal, here we go. So we go to, yeah, here. Okay, so we've got surreal.com. Okay, and you can see all of the data, you know, all of the things that you would expect, including some sales stuff and, you know, all the sort of stuff. I wanted to draw your attention to the documentation. So there's been a lot of thought that's gone into the documentation. It's something that I've used quite a lot so far. Surrealist is really useful for having a quick go in the browser, and it is so quick because essentially, to my understanding, it's embedded in the browser, so that it's just essentially it's not hitting a cloud, it's just like going back and forth in your own on your own computer. But it doesn't allow you to do everything, and especially if you're getting to the point where you're needing to write scripts, you know, like Python scripts that execute something or whatever language you might want to use, you'll need to move away from using Surrealist probably into using it on your own computer. And I just wanted to draw your attention to the docs. So there is an extensive selection of docs. The things which are really useful, but like basically what we talked about in terms of different SDKs, is if you go onto the client libraries, you can see that there's a variety of different options available. So for example, if we were to go into Python, you would see that there's a variety of different options, like how you would set it up, pip install in this case. And then with Java, I think this is quite a Java-based community at the moment. Is that correct? I apologize, I don't know any Java, but yeah. So you can go onto this and you can have a go at trying to get the SDK to work. Okay, so
we have all. It's just that our platform project is on Java, but we have like whole lot of people who work with Python as well. So yeah, your experience would be really helpful here.
Cool. Yeah, that's great to hear. Okay, so that's some of the stuff that you can have a look at. And then if we go to the documentation and we search, like, I don't know, like vector search, something we did last week, you'll see that there's extensive guidelines. So anything that we've covered, you'll be able to find in documentation. It's really powerful and it's well indexed, so you can find most things. So for example, with the vector searching, we talked last week about cosine similarity. So that's being able to figure out what node is closest to another node in this, you know, in our case, 5-dimensional vector. So if we go down here, you'll see a lot of the different documentation. And then if we go to, let's look for that, cosine. Yeah, we'll go to vector functions. And you'll see that in addition to cosine, you've also got a variety of different distances, different inbuilt functions that you can use in this case with vectors, and so this is really powerful. And I just wanted to draw your attention on the left hand side. This is something I use probably more than anything else in documentation, is like the database functions, because there are a bunch of database functions. So if you, I don't know, for example, needed like a random like for some reason you needed to create a random number, you could do that within the database. You wouldn't have to necessarily write your code outside and then insert it into the database. And then there's some useful stuff around maths. Those are kind of the main ones that I've ended up using, which is, yeah, basically vectors, because I'm dealing with graphing as well. And then the random and what other things? Yes, those are kind of the main ones. So super useful, and it's really worth spending some time in the documentation. The other thing, which we're not going to go through in this introduction to Surreal, but you will see that there, in various places, there's this thing called Surreal ML. So Surreal ML, there's some extensive documentations and tutorials that you can work through, but essentially, and please correct me if I'm wrong, what you can do is that you can put a machine learning model that you've trained in some way, and you can put it into the database. So, for example, if you had that classic machine learning problem where you're trying to work out what is the price of a house given square footage and how many bedrooms it has, if you put that model into the database and then queried the database and was like, I've got a house that's got this amount of square footage and whatever the other variables are, it would give you, it would run it against the machine learning like trained model, and then it would give you an answer back out. So that seems, I'm not someone who uses machine learning, but it seems like everyone is, and so definitely check that out if you're in any way interested in machine learning. Cool. Is that a hand or a clap?
A clap.
Oh, exciting. Okay, so before I go on to the fundamentals course, Alex, is there anything else you want to draw attention to in docs?
Not as much. Just also want to kind of like mention that as opposed to having an external system or an extension, this is built into the core of the database. So there's no difference from using this or vectors or the where clause. It's all kind of the same thing.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to go to Alexander's baby, which is the fundamentals course. So let me, which is the best way to get into it? Let's just go back to the home page. So if you go to the home page and then you go to SurrealDB University, you will see that there is 3 available. And if you go to the fundamentals course, you'll have to sign up. Now, this is working. I have YouTube blocked on my computer, so this is why this is not showing any videos. So essentially, you would normally be able to see Alex's face giving an introduction. So if you sign up, I've already signed up, so that's how it knows it's me. you can work through for free the fundamentals course, which will go through a lot of what we've talked about in a lot more detail. And it will deal with some of the stuff that we had a lot of questions last week, some of them around, security and kind of authentication and all of that stuff. So that is covered within it. And it's definitely worth spending some time. Alex, is there anything you want to add to the fundamentals?
Yeah, I think the key thing I wanted just to say is that a lot of time you have these kind of like 20-hour long courses, and like you might have like a video that's just like 20 minutes talking about like string data types. And the goal with this is to do like the opposite of that, is to be as concise as possible and allow you to build your application as soon as possible. And so it goes through all the kind of like fundamentals you need. And then for each example, it is completely runnable. And so you will have the video on one side, and then you'll have an actual Surrealist on the other side, and you can use it and query it, and it tracks the video as well. And there's also in the text, every example in the text, you can run it as well. So it's a very interactive experience.
So for example, if you clicked on here, you've read this bit, you can then run it from within the same without having to like switch into Surrealist in a different tab. And then this is not just like a static site that only runs this query. This is like full Surrealist, so you can run whatever you wanted. Yeah, and just have a bit of a play. So say you wanted to create person, you're like, oh, this is great, I want to use this. But you could then also create, I don't know, some other like location, for example, and have a play around with it next to the bit that you're covering. So yeah, I've learned a lot. I haven't finished yet, but I've learned a lot already just going through it. So yeah, it's well worth it. Cool. So I think basically that's the end of my talk. I tried to make it a little bit shorter this time because we had a lot of questions last week. But hopefully you've had a bit of a flavor. So just in summary of what we've talked about so far in these talks, we've talked about normal SQL functions. We've talked about schemaful versus schemaless. We've talked about querying in various different sorts. We've talked about vector searching, which is probably, you can tell, one of my favorite things. So cool. We've talked about graphing and then some additional like operations that you can use via the inbuilt functions. So for example, cosine, similarity, maths functions, random functions. And then hopefully I've given you a taste of where to go next. So I was starting to use Surreal before the fundamentals course came on, which I am kind of sad about because it's so good. It's definitely well worth spending time. I would say start with that first. And then once you've kind of got questions or you're building something, you move on to the documentation. Documentation is really good. And in general, like often someone has already created the thing that you need. So for example, I could have spent a lot of time trying to create a cosine similarity. I've done it in Rust before, and for a chatbot part of our medical education app, and it took ages. It was like probably, yeah, I don't know, like it took a while to kind of get the like it integrated, and this just comes out of the box. So very useful. And I think that's it. So any more questions, please put your hand up or just shout out. Okay. Well, we have the opposite problem that we had last week. We have no questions. Do you want to spend a bit of time talking about what we'll do next week?
Yeah, I think that that should be okay. Like we can just give everyone a brief what we are planning to do next week.
So I think what we've got down to do is to try and build something to do with the women coding community platform. But so I think there's a variety of different ways that it could be run. I don't know enough about the Women Coding community platform to be able to give a huge amount of direction in what needs to be done. But I guess if there's any part of what we've covered that you might want to use, I had in mind the mentoring aspect of it might be something which could be used with maybe vector searching or something, if we could do it.
Yeah, I think that's what was our idea. We can think of like, there are a couple of use cases where we will have set of mentors. Like there's a whole set of, you can say, data set about mentors and their interest or their skills. Plus, we would have another set of data set about mentees who would be, who would do some sort of walk through, and we would like to pair them. So currently we have an option that they come on our website and they just browse through all the existing mentors and they read through their skills. So maybe that's the basic stuff that we would like to have, how we can make sure like a recommendation, like these set of mentors would be more aligned to your profile for a mentee coming through. So yeah, I think that would be something, some sort of use case we can work towards in the next session.
Okay, cool. So I think maybe we should just have a chat about what that data looks like. Maybe we can have some fake data or something for building it. Yeah, great. Yeah, let's coordinate on email over that. But I think, yeah, if anyone else wants to get involved in the planning, we should get them involved, because I think in fact